Morning, ladies. Thank you to a fellow for opening our home. It should always be full of friends, family, Torah, and a nice breakfast. So we continue over here in Otze Dinim Leishal Bat, and in Perek Chavchet he discusses what it is you are or not able to do when it comes to children and babies. So when it comes to somebody who's preparing food, and quite often whether it's formula you need to put in the bottle, or certain amounts of food you need to mix with stuff, are you able to measure stuff on a scale on Shabbat?
No.
So he says over here, Mechin ochel b'Shabbat b'shvil tinok. Tzarich ladat et kamut. You're preparing food, you need to know the measurement. And mutado l'shkot ha'ochel olamdo b'Shabbat. You're able to measure it. B'vad sha'mishkal eno mefa'al de batari. As long as it's not an electric scale, could be Ashkenazim differ, but he says over here Sfaradim, you'd be able to measure it. Ve'im efshar la'asot ken ha'yedei pi omed hadat mukhra. Right? It's better if you don't weigh it. It's better if you don't have to put an actual scale and you can eye it. I think.
Is a scoop considered weighing? You know, you'll say on the scoop like 1 ounce, 2 ounces.
I don't think that's what he's referring to. That I think for sure shouldn't be a problem. I think he's talking about an actual scale that they had back in the day. Some of the stuff, you have to remember, this was written maybe 30 plus years ago, and is always going based. This is in Israel where they don't necessarily have as updated technology as we do. But for sure, you take out a scooper, you're not sitting there measuring exactly. You scoop it out and it says it. Or if you have a baby bottle, and sometimes the baby bottle already has measurements on the bottle, you're looking at that. You're not necessarily weighing it exactly. Right, when it comes to recipes. So I don't know much about these things, but my understanding is you ask an old school woman and say, "Oh, I want the recipe," and they'll tell you, you put in a pinch of this and a shake of that, and you measure it by eye. And most people younger, especially if it's their first or second time making something, want to know exact measurements, and they don't get exact measurements, and it doesn't come out right because it's... But to measure it, he says the ideal is not to measure it, but if you need to, you would be able to, obviously not with an electric scale. I can find out if the Ashkenazim differ. What about when it comes to the baby has a dirty diaper, a dirty nappy, and it leaked a little bit? Are you able to take a paper towel or a tissue, wet it, and then start cleaning the baby? Is that allowed? Not allowed? You're saying no, she's saying yes. Right? What about using a wipe? Are wipes allowed? Yeah, we're getting controversial. Right? We're getting controversial.
Not too wet.
On the actual baby. We're not the clothes we said, right? So it sort of depends on how much you're going to wet it, and depends. I remember my rabbi said at first when wipes became a thing. So you're going back 30, 40 years ago. And I'm 43. So I remember when I was, my parents told me when I was like 10 months old, they went to Israel, and in Israel they didn't yet have disposable nappies, disposable diapers. They were still using the cloth ones. And my mother was like, we should totally bring these things to Israel. We'll make lots of money. And my father was like, no one in Israel is going to pay money for disposable. Like it's just, it'll never happen, right? That was 42 years ago. But when wipes became a thing, so my rabbi said they asked him, you allowed to use wipes? He says, I don't know. And he got a wipe and he twisted it. And as he twisted it, you could see the liquid draining out of it. He said, how could you use these things? Look how wet they are. So it sort of depends on how wet they are. Some people will say better not to use wipes, better to have a spray and then use it. You're spraying on the baby. Right, over here he says if it's going to be a tissue or paper towel and it's not especially wet, then it wouldn't necessarily be a problem. Wipes, like we said, are ask your local Orthodox rabbi, quite controversial, but most people will use wipes, assuming that they're not too soaked in water, and every time you just wipe, there's going to be loads of residue. I think they have different types. I'm not an expert. You ladies might know better than me, but there's certain ones they have like soap on them, and even when you wipe, you just see right away. There's Huggies. There's I don't know the different ones, but the Huggies ones you're saying are very wet. They're very wet. That might be much more of a problem than other companies. So even the different. Yeah.
What about using
Which one?
for the surface?
To clean.
Like on Shabbos, you can't use
On
Shabbos.
Shabbat. I had that last year when I was in Israel. My wife said to me, we ran out of wipes. And I went to the store, and they had the diapers, they had the nappies, and like there was nothing over here, and then right next to them was wipes, but they didn't look right. And I asked somebody, I'm like, are these the wipes for the baby? She's like, no, these are the wipes for the kitchen. These have bleach. If you did that to your kid, your wife would kill you. I'm like, why would they put it right next to? Like, there's bad planning over there. I'm like, it looked off to me. That's why I was asking. But the lady thought I was insane. Right, to use those wipes to clean the counter, again, depending on how wet they're going to be, as opposed to just putting some water down in a towel, you'll get into the question of schita or not. So it sort of depends on how much you're doing it. Better to be safe. Right. It says if the baby is quite dirty, you need to bathe the baby to some extent. You're getting into the whole question of the hot water. Yes, hot water, not hot water, where the hot water comes from. Is it right there in the tank? Most systems, Israel is different with the Dut Shemesh. Most systems, when you take out hot water, it brings in new hot water that'll then be water that'll then be heated up, and therefore you're cooking that water on Shabbat. If you have a system that doesn't work that way, it might be different. All right. This one, I'm not sure how common this is, but he says, if a child has worms that's stuck inside of them, or maybe they ate something and you need to pull out the worms, you don't have to worry that, oh, you're killing the worms, or it's a problem. Obviously, you need to do what's best for the baby. I would assume it's the same thing if, chas v'shalom, a baby goes wherever it might be and you get a tick, right? And the tick gets stuck, you're allowed to pull it out on Shabbat. You're killing the tick. Yeah? You should never pull a tick. You have to. Okay, I don't know these things. I know my wife said to me when she was a kid, she had a tick and they took it out, and then she got Lyme disease because it wasn't taken out properly, and yeah, she was in the hospital for a while. So you have to be careful. What about? Right, for dogs. What about when it comes to lice? Right, somebody has lice or somebody has nits. Hopefully this doesn't happen. In America, it's like practically unheard of. In England, it's a bit more common. But are you able to take those out on Shabbat? I don't know that it's borer. It's probably you're killing the tick. But
lice can live outside.
Yeah.
Did someone say about lice?
Yeah. What were you saying?
No, so what about lice?
That's what we're saying.
Are you talking about the
Right.
lice, or are you talking about the eggs?
It seems like he's talking about everyone's just getting itchy, aren't you? Right? It seems like right. It's the reality of the situation, right? It says Yeshno hagot leflot harosh benotehem mikinim. Somebody has kinim, has lice. B'Shabbat Yom Tov av sheyesh lachshosh lishat hasarot. What might you be worried about? That when you're pulling out the nits or the lice, you might pull out hair. He says, there's definitely opinions that say that it would be okay. Obviously, be careful not to pull out the hair. And he says, try and be careful not to actually kill. If there's lice, when you're taking out the lice, try not to kill them. Put them out, they survive, they don't survive, but you're not actually killing them when you're taking them out. Hopefully, this doesn't become a problem for anybody. I guess you're using either fingers or using like a tweezer. A tweezer might be a question if you're able to use a utensil. Lice comb, I would assume, pulls the hair and pulls them, and therefore is more problematic. But hopefully, again, nobody has this. Right? He says when it comes to disposable diapers, disposable nappies, right? When you're taking it off nowadays, I don't think it's very common. But sometimes you pull it off and it rips. So he says, be careful that when you pull it off slowly. Right? And therefore you're not ripping it. I don't know how important it is to tell the men and teach the men these halachot. I know my son, my oldest, now it's a little bit different. I guess you get used to it. But the first 6 months I never changed the diaper, and then I came home, my wife went out, and after 2 minutes he pooped, and I called her up. I'm like, when are you coming home? She's like, I don't know, 2 hours. And he was crying, and I felt really bad. Right? So I did it, and then I ran out right when she came in. I had to get at a meeting, and then after 2 hours, I called her. How's it going? How's the baby? And you know when someone's smiling on the other end of the phone, you could just I'm like, what's so funny? She's like, did you change the diaper? I'm like, why? She's like, well, it's on backwards. I'm like, how do you know which? I use 2 bags of wipes. I don't know what's the front, what's the back. It could be the same either way. So you have to be careful to try not to rip it, and therefore take it off slowly. Again, nowadays I don't know how common it is to rip it. But there's 3 pages over here when it comes to of all the commentary when it comes to the nappies and what to do and how to do. But try and be careful to do it slowly and definitely not to rip it on Shabbat. Right?
If you're allowed to wipe down a baby with water, you also say the older child sits on stuff. I know the whole hot water thing is question, but can you rinse them down with cold water in the bath? Fine.
Yeah, I don't see why not. If it's going to be cold water and whatever it is. He says over here, the next thing he says, you have a child who has a high fever, right? This might be the most Sephardi halacha that we've ever done. It says, if somebody has a high fever, even if it's not necessarily very, very dangerous, you're able to rub arak all over him to bring down, it doesn't get more smarty than that, right? To bring down the temperature. You want to rub some stuff, again, it's not a cream, it's not a thing, and therefore, if you want to bring down the temperature, bring down the fever, that's not a problem. He says you have a woman, he goes through a bunch of halachot of women nursing. He says you have a woman who's nursing, that the child isn't feeling well and doesn't really want to nurse. The baby's sort of refusing to nurse. And she wants to express the milk. Right? Is she able to, it's painful if it just stays there, the baby doesn't want to nurse. Is she able to express the milk or not on Shabbat?
Put it into something that can't be used.
So he says to put it into a regular bottle that you might use, that's problematic. You need to put it into a kli, or just express it straight into the sink, or whatever it might be, into the bathtub, where it's clear that you're not using it, or into a kli, into a utensil that you're not going to be using. You're not allowed to express milk on Shabbat to then be used. But if it's painful, of course, we don't want you to be in pain, you're able to. So you say, no, that milk, that either you're nursing to the baby, but if the baby's refusing to nurse, and it's painful, and you just want to get out of the milk, you're not allowed to put it into a regular utensil.
My baby was not early, but was in the NICU, and like they couldn't believe that I was gonna like pump, like to get milk out and like throw it away. It's like the worst thing you can ever do. You can't have it like
That's the halacha. The halacha is that you're not supposed to be expressing it into a utensil. It says makom sakana, if it's going to be very dangerous and that's the only thing available and you don't want to start expressing it onto the ground or whatever it is, then you can use. But otherwise, he says you're able to express. You shouldn't be in pain, but you shouldn't be using it.
Reason why can't
So
if it's got use on Shabbat?
It's interesting. He says over here when he discusses it at the bottom, he says if you have a child that's in the 6th or 7th or 8th month that would normally be in an incubator, so you can't actually necessarily hold the baby, it's got to be in the incubator, but you still want to be able to give it your milk, right? Then are you able to do it? He says better to do it with another person. Might be weird, but do it with another person, because he's going through, he's saying when you do it with another person, it's much more allowed as opposed to doing it by yourself, right? He says tziruf hasfarash en chilba asur min haTorah. Really, taking out the milk's not from the Torah, it's from the rabbis, it's the Rabbanan, mitzad ha'chliva. I guess it's a milking thing when it comes to milking in general. The rabbis gave an isur that you shouldn't be milking the cow also over there. That it's going to be, if it's in pain, you're able to do it as long as you're not using the milk. On Shabbat, which one of the 39 melachot is it you're asking?
No, I don't really understand what would be wrong if you're doing it for, like, so you can squeeze lemon straight into something on Shabbat. So like to me, if it's
The halacha that I skipped because he asked the question. He says, let's say the baby's just not attaching, and you want to sort of almost get the baby's attention, or you want to get a little bit of milk, you'd be able to squeeze and get a couple of drops on the baby's lips, and now the baby knows, oh great, and starts trying to nurse.
Yeah.
So over there he says you wouldn't be able to squeeze because, like you're saying, you're using it right away, it's going straight to the baby, and now the baby is going to continue nursing.
Something if the baby's not well, yeah, and you feed every 3 hours, and he might be like just now very agitated, but in an hour's time he'll calm down or his temperature will go down, but then you need to nurse the baby. So can you not sort of like keep it for?
You're not. It seems you're not supposed to keep it. You know what I mean?
small amount to be a bit more comfortable. You don't need to.
Yeah.
You don't need to empty it.
Yeah. Don't express it all. Yeah.
Many years ago, I know somebody who had a baby who was in hospital because they were born early and had other medical. And I'm pretty sure on Shabbos, because they needed to give the milk to the baby, I think they had like an electric pump on a time switch.
Yeah. So that's also the same thing as using a second person is putting an electric pump on a time switch. Yeah, that also, I remember the woman said to me, Yom Kippur, she wanted to, yes, no, how? Fasting, the baby, if she doesn't drink, then she doesn't get milk, so she wants to do it at the beginning. Right? And then the rabbi said, if you're going to do it with a timer, then it's less problematic to have it on a switch and use the electric pump. He also said that if she needs to express this so that she feels more comfortable, and it's there, it's set up with a bottle that it automatically puts it into the bottle. She says, put some Coca-Cola, put something else in the bottle, so now it's obvious that you're not going to be using that milk. right? Because the way that the pump's set up is it's going to go into the bottle. The pump's much more comfortable maybe than expressing by hand or whatever it is. It says then make it that it's not usable. It's a kli ma'us. It's a thing. But yeah, the incubator gets into a whole question. So you do what you got to do to make sure that the baby's there. And if you're going to use electric pump or you're going to use a second person or whatever it is, that is, I'll find out for you exactly what it is. Because
I just don't
right,
understand why. Like, what's the big deal?
I
with
think
you?
the Rabbanan came out that you shouldn't be expressing on Shabbat. Otherwise,
It seems strange if there's a use for it on Shabbat. It doesn't make sense why you would.
if the baby's nursing right away, if not, then it's just
But if
I
it-
doing
guess some
something
people
for
do it
afterwards.
also to like increase their supply and things like that. So if it has no,
Yes, if you're not using it on
Yeah.
Shabbat, I do understand. But if you have a plan to use it an hour or two later, that I don't
But you're
understand.
not allowed to milk a cow on Shabbos either. You're not allowed to.
correct. You're not allowed to.
When you milk
Yeah.
a cow, you have to throw away the milk.
Yeah.
It's not to do with no lad.
I thought it was to do with that as well.
Potentially. It says over here, we'll do the last one. Isha nivala o
I
ka'asa.
think it's new on Shabbos. On the rise on Shabbos, you can't.
If a woman got very upset or very angry, and our rabbis tell us that if a woman gets very upset or angry, that causes the milk to be somewhat problematic. My father is one of 10. He grew up in Yemen. In Yemen, or in many of the Middle Eastern third world countries, the child mortality rate is not very high. My father was saying that his uncle, his cousins, they had 8 kids, 4 of them lived, 4 didn't. But nowadays, when they were trying to assess countries, they look at the child mortality rate. So my father said that he's one of 10, but he had one sister that was younger that passed away at the age of 1, and they sort of blamed him because he got in a big fight with his cousin, and then my grandmother got very upset, and then she nursed the baby, and afterwards, it's a thing that if you have, again, they didn't blame him, but you know what I mean? It's a very smarty thing. Don't get the woman upset because it affects the milk. It really does. And he says, Isha shenivala o ka'asa. She got a sudden fright, or she got angry. She sakana lavla linok me'oto chalav, and that milk is now a sakana. Mutala lachlov v'shabbat b'yadideh. Right, she's able to express the milk. Kadesh hachalav yelech leibud, as long as it gets out, obviously, and then more milk will come in, and she'll be able to nurse the baby. But it is apparently a thing that you need to be careful if you get upset that
And it goes sour.
it goes sour, it goes off, it can be problematic, and therefore, yeah, he says you are able to express that. All right. This week's parasha Pinchas, is somewhat of a continuation from last week's parasha. Not somewhat, is a continuation. Right, at the end of last week's parasha, the whole parasha Bilam is trying to curse the Jews. Right? Somebody said to me, I gave a shiur on Shabbat, like you have to read through the psukim. It was on Parashat Balak. I was saying how 3,000 years nothing's changed. Right, the anti-Semitism. At the beginning of the parasha last week, it says, "Vayar Balak ben Zippor," and Balak ben Zippor saw at kol asher asa Yisrael Emori, all the things that the Jewish people did to the Emori. Vayakotz, right, and he was disgusted. What did Jews do that he should be disgusted? Nothing. And what does he say? He sends a message to the other nations. He says, "Ata now yelachacho akahal et kol svivotenu." These people are coming to take up all the surrounding lands. Like an animal comes and licks up all the green. Balak's disgusted. Balak's saying they're a bunch of animals. They're coming, taking all our land. What did we do to the Amoris? You look at the end of Parashat Chukat, and it says that the Jewish people said to Amori, we'd like to just pass through the land. We're not going to touch anything. We're not going to take from your wells. We're not. Derech HaMelech Nelech. We'll stay to the main roads. And what are they told? No, you can't come. Not just that. Amori attacks the Jewish people. We defend ourselves. That's all the Torah says. And what does Balak say? Look at these Jews, disgusting, genocide, bunch of animals, taking up all our land. Right? All we did was defend ourselves. I'm like, 3,000 years, nothing's changed.
Yes, sounds familiar.
It's exactly, you read the news and you read the parasha, it's exactly the same. Right? Literally, animals taking up all our land, right? Disgusting. We didn't do anything. The Torah says we defended ourselves. But that's the world we're living in. And Bilam is trying to curse the Jews. Eventually he realizes Hashem's not allowing him to. What does he do? He sends out the women to entice the Jewish people. I remember hearing one time, how is Bilam going to curse the Jews? Right, what was he going to say to curse the Jews? Anybody know? Kalim. One word. Destroy them. Bilam knew the exact second that Hashem got angry. A second. And in that 1 second, he was going to say, destroy them. And Hashem kept not getting angry. So, because he wasn't able to find that opportunity, therefore he wasn't able to curse us. But I don't know exactly how this works. Al pi Kabbalah, they say, why is it does that second Hashem gets angry? There needs to be anger in the world, because you need to utilize it the right way. Right? I think we mentioned after October 7th, and I was sitting Shiva, so Lady Sachs and Rabbi Sachs' son Josh came to pay respects, and I said, I've been quoting your husband a lot lately. What do you mean? I said, I saw a video, 1 minute video. Rabbi Sachs is being interviewed, I think during COVID, South African accent, and the woman said to him, Rabbi, last time we spoke, I asked you, why do bad things happen to good people? And you said to me, well, nobody understands. Is there anything you'd like to add? And Rabbi Sachs said yes. Now I'm watching this thinking, Moshe Rabbeinu asked this question. Show me your ways. Right? And Hashem says, no person can see me and survive. And what can he possibly add? And Rabbi Sachs said, Hashem will never allow us to understand why bad things happen to good people. Because if we understood, we wouldn't fight against evil and injustice. We would say, it makes sense why there was an October 7th. It makes sense why there was a pogrom. It makes sense why there was an Inquisition. And then you wouldn't fight. And our job is to fight. Our job is to stand up against evil and injustice. So we'll never understand why these things happen. I thought it was amazing. Bil'am understood there needs to be at 1 second where Hashem gets angry. Because when Hashem sees immorality, he needs there to be in creation. How could this happen? I created husband and wife. I created the concept of love and all these things, and now you're using it in a perverse way. So Hashem gets upset. Hashem lets there be anger in the world so that we could tap into that anger to use it the right way, to fight injustice. When Bil'am saw that Hashem wasn't getting angry, he said, okay, perfect. I'm going to use that. Because if there's no longer that anger against immorality and injustice and bad, I'll send out the women and they'll give in to temptation. Because they won't be able to tap into that koach of how's this woman dressing that way? And I can't believe she has the audacity to come and try and entice me. That anger isn't there, that koach isn't there to fight it, if you will. And when Bil'am tried to curse the Jews and Hashem wasn't getting angry, is this making sense? Or yeah? That's how Bil'am's able to, again, I'm a simple guy, that's the Kabbalistic, on a very simple level, what was happening up there and how Bil'am was able, and the Jewish people given to temptation. And there's a Magefa. The Gemara talks about how Moshe Rabbeinu was getting tens of thousands of soldiers to go to war. This was going to be a massive civil war, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, expected dead. And Pinchas gets up and he kills Kozbi and Zimri. Vata'atzara Magefa, the plague. Hashem sent out a plague besides the civil war. The plague stops. How many people died in the plague? Vayu metim Magefa, arba'a ve'esrim alef, 24,000. Right, we gave a shiur a few years ago. 24,000. Where else do we see this number? Students from Rabbi Akiva. We talked about Gilgulim and Kozbi and Zimri and Pinchas and Rabbi Akiva. Right? Remember? Sounds familiar? No? We'll have to do it another time. It's a good one. I think we gave the class, I'm pretty sure. And Pinchas gets up. That's the end of last week's parasha. This week's parasha is a continuation. Our rabbis say, to get up and just kill somebody is not very simple. You need a week to stop and think and contemplate. Right? Because on a very simple level, you might say, can you just get up and kill somebody? I'm very upset at this person. What they did is terrible. Immorality. They're horrendous. Even if you see somebody killing someone else, can you now go and kill that person? No, there's a judicial system. You have to go to Beit Din. You have to testify. You can't just go around killing people. What does Pinchas do? He just gets up and kills Kozbi and Zimri. You have to appreciate Zimri was the head of a tribe. To be the head of a tribe is what we would consider the Gadol Hador of all Gadol Hadors. Like, there's Moshe, Aharon already had passed away, and then there's the heads of the tribes. And Zimri was quite elderly. And Pinchas, this kid, just gets up and kills this great rabbi. Who are you? How dare you? Right? You can't just get up and kill people. So this is not very simple. So the parasha ends and we have some time to think about it. What exactly happened? How is this any different than a suicide bomber? Allahu Akbar, I'm doing this for God. Pinchas doing it for God. Right? What does Hashem say? This week's parasha, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen. It gives you his lineage. Why do we have to know his lineage? Why do we have to know Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen? To know where he came from. More than that. Says Rashi, Elazar has a very important father-in-law that most people don't realize is his father-in-law. Who is Elazar's father-in-law? Good thing we came here today. Who's Elazar's father-in-law? I'll give you a hint. His brother-in-law is with Moshe Levy. Now, who is his father-in-law? Yitro. Right? Yitro is the father-in-law of Elazar. Elazar marries Tzipporah's sister. And the Rashi brings down the Gemara saying, you know what people were saying? This Pinchas guy, look who his grandfather is. His grandfather is Yitro, the guy who went around worshipping every single idol. Of course he's this terrible guy getting up and killing one of the heads of the tribes. How dare he? There's chaos, there's a plague. 24,000 people dying, that's a lot of people. Left, right, center, there's people dying, there's people screaming, don't do it, people screaming, it's okay, he's a rabbi, yes, no, how, what's going on? People are giving into temptation, left, right, and center, the women are all over the place, the Midianite women, it's just chaos. And this guy gets up and kills one of the biggest rabbis. Where did he get this from? It's from his DNA, because you know who his grandfather is? Yitro, the guy who worshipped every idols. Right? Ben Putizeh, says Rashi. The one who was Mifatem, who went and worshipped all the idols. So the Torah says, no. You know which side of the family this came from? Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. This didn't come from the Yitro, somewhat potentially contaminated part of the family. This came from Aharon HaKohen. Right? The Mishnah in Pirkei Avot says, it's the first chapter, number 9, says Hillel, be a student of Aharon HaKohen. Human Talmidav Shel Aharon Kohen. What are the words? Ohev Shalom, V'rodef Shalom. What does this word Rodef mean? Pursue. But in the Gemara, whenever you see the word Rodef, you know what it means? Someone who's trying to kill. If somebody's a Rodef, someone trying to kill you, get up and kill them first. You wouldn't associate the word Rodef with Shalom. They don't go together. How can you say the killer of peace? Right? Because sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes doing what Pinchas did is actually create shalom. And that's what Hashem says. Moshe Rabbeinu tell Pinchas, Hineni notenot biriti shalom. I give him the peace prize. The guy who killed Osama bin Laden. Hero? Is he getting the Nobel Peace Prize? Probably not. You killed somebody, you don't get the peace prize. What he did is right, what he did is good, he took out a terrorist, the guy deserved it, but peace prize? What's the Torah teaching us? Yeah. Pinchas just killed somebody, but that caused shalom. Now this is a very slippery slope. Because if you go around saying, he stood up for what was right, you have a lot of people nowadays that also stand up for what's right. But it causes a lot of problems. Right? Because they're convinced that what we're doing is right. Every suicide bomber, what are they? I'm doing this for God. Allahu Akbar. L'Shem Shamayim, right? Because even though when they discuss Pinchas and they discuss Zimri stood up in front of everybody, takes this woman into the tent, you would have said, where is this coming from? The head of the tribe, Zimri is the head of which tribe? Shimon. And Pinchas is from which tribe? Levi. So we have Shimon and Levi. We discussed a few weeks ago when we talked about Korach, right? Shimon and Levi, they have this character trait of standing up for what they believe in. Over here, you have the opposite extremes. Zimri thought what he was doing was the right thing to do, right? And Pinchas understood what he's doing is the right thing to do. Both of them, Kanaim, zealots. What's the difference between the two? Even when Shimon and Levi used their zealotry, where'd they use their zealotry? When they killed the whole city of Shechem because their sister got raped. Yaakov Avinu is happy about this or not? Not really, but he never told them what they did is wrong. He just said, there's a way of doing things. We live in surrounding cities, you got to play the politics game in a better way. But what they did wasn't necessarily wrong, but he still got upset and said, you shouldn't have done it. Why? Because if you look back at Parashat Vayishlach, what is it? They say, Hakazona ya'aset achotenu, our sister is going to be a zona. This is how you're going to treat our sister. And what they did is wrong. What Shechem did was wrong. But what were they really upset about? Not just that it was wrong, that it's our sister. They were a bit nogea b'davar. They had a conflict of interest. our rabbis tell us Pinchas didn't have a conflict of interest. He did this 1,000,000% L'Shem Shamayim. The Kanot Kenati, he stood up. Now the commentaries say, why didn't Moshe Rabbeinu kill Cozbi and Zimri?
Because he married also from.
It was a conflict of interest. Because before Zimri takes this Midianite woman, he comes to Moshe and says, can I be with this Midianite woman? Moshe says, of course not, she's not Jewish. And Zimri says, your wife Tzipora is from where again? So now Moshe, it's different. Before Matan Torah, she converted. It wasn't just a physical act. But now it's already, if Moshe kills him, what are people going to say? He's taking revenge. He embarrassed him. He didn't want to look bad. So Moshe almost can't. Pinchas does it 100% L'Shem Shamayim. 100% L'Shem Shamayim. It's very hard for the average person to be 100% L'Shem Shamayim. Right? But Pinchas gets up and he's rodef. He kills somebody. But what does Hashem say? That causes shalom. Again, nowadays, I'm not recommending anybody gets up and kills anybody, even if they're 100% right. You have da'at Torah. You need to ask the rabbis. And even amongst the rabbis, quite often there's different opinions. And you might have some rabbis that like to get up and say, we need to do... Someone said to me, and we might have mentioned this in the past, Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. The job of a Talmid Chacham is to increase shalom. Now again, we're saying over here, the killing is shalom, but it's very rare. There was a rabbi here in London, there was a whole political thing, what he said, the rabbis were against him, this, no help. Someone said to me, you need to speak to the Gedolim. What's your opinion? I saw one rabbi, he put it, I thought, very nicely. He says, you have a Hatzalah guy, he runs into the house, there's an emergency. He puts the guy in the stretcher, and he says, look, I think the guy needs brain surgery. I think the guy needs a triple bypass. Does the Hatzalah guy do surgery? No, he's the Hatzalah guy. He comes in, tries to make sure he can get him to the surgery. I said, when you're dealing with some big situations, who's fit to be a rabbi, who's not? What's the halacha in big situations? You need to speak to the head surgeon. I'm a Hatzalah guy. I don't decide, but I do my best. Prepare some Torah, give it over. But you need the Dayanim and the Tzaddikim and the biggest rabbis to decide. But you had certain people, what he did is wrong, what he said is wrong. Are you creating shalom? There's a way to do things. There's a way to do things. Talmidei Chachamim, quietly, calmly, marbim shalom. They try and do whatever they can. Diane and Aaron Troy came and they said, relax. Let's figure this out very calmly. And we'll make shalom. Things don't need to be in the newspapers and in the public and fighting and taking sides. Talmidei Chachamim, wise people, their job is to make shalom. I think we might have given the example. I was speaking a couple of weeks ago. Sid did a Shabbaton in Edgeware. They asked me to come over. And there was a guy over there who had a special needs child. And I didn't say the first part to him, but there was a rabbi they wanted to bring in to speak in London, Rabbi Mizrahi. And the government didn't allow him to come in. Why didn't the government allow him to come in? Because he was, he preached hate. How did he preach hate? So, one time he was giving a shiur, he takes out Tikkunei HaZohar. And he starts reading about Gilgulim and reincarnations. And he says if somebody has a special needs child, it means they sinned in a previous life. They were sent back down here because they had to fix what it is they sinned in a previous life, and that's why they're special needs. So, many people who had special needs childs were obviously very upset. And this guy's preaching hate and terrible what he says. And they went to the government. The government didn't allow him to come in. Somebody came to me and said, Rabbi, he didn't make it up. He read from Tikkunei HaZohar. If it wasn't him, if that's what the Zohar says, that's what the Zohar says. Like, he's not wrong. So why is everybody so upset at him? And I said, and this is what I told this guy with a special needs child. I said, the Chazon Ish, a few weeks before he passed away, 1949, this woman came for a bracha with her special needs child in the wheelchair. She rose in the special needs child. The Chazon Ish painstakingly stands up and sits back down. And the woman said, why did the rabbi just stand up? And the Chazon Ish said, everybody's sent into this world with a mission. And they're given the abilities and the talents to accomplish that mission. If your child doesn't have the abilities that you and I have, it means it's a very, very, very holy neshama. It just needs a little bit to be perfect. Such a holy neshama, I shouldn't stand up for it. Now, the Chazon Ish and Rabbi Mizrahi said the same thing. But they didn't at all say the same thing. There's a way to say it. Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom. Our job is to create shalom. So even if you think what she did is terrible, and everybody has to know, and how dare she, speak to it tzaddik, speak to it tzaddik, speak to that, because chances are the reason you're so upset is because you were offended. We've mentioned many a times, but it's worth repeating all the time. The first video I ever saw go viral, Jewish video, is from Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson. That must have been 10, 12 years ago. And he was sitting doing a tish, and I forget which Rebbe he quoted, but probably one of the Lubavitcher Rebbes. I was one time here in London, and Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson? Yeah. He's great. And we were doing a Friday night dinner in St. John's Wood in Anshe Shalom. And he was here for a Shabbaton, so they had him come speak. And he goes, you know, I'm not Ashkenazi. We're talking about it, let's get more Ashkenazi. He says, my family's from Georgia. My name was Yaakov Shvili. Anybody knows anyone from Georgia? Shvili just means son, right? The Shvili is, a lot of people in their surname has Shvili. Shvili means son. It says Yaakov Shvili, Jacob's son. He said that's where my family comes from. Within a generation or two, they became Chabad, but Yaakov Shvili was Jacobson. Either way, right? So Rabbi Jacobson sitting there doing a tish, and he says, from this Rebbe, he says, we have a lot to learn from children. He says, you have a 4-year-old, they're in playgroup, they're playing with their truck, comes somebody else, pushes them down, steals the truck. The 4-year-old sits there crying. The next day, are those two kids going to play together? Yeah. You have an adult, this one says hello, that one didn't realize, this one forgot, they're overwhelmed, they're making a day, and they send a message, they forgot to invite this one for the kiddush, or for the party. How dare, they don't speak for 20 years. It says, how come kids, the next day they play together, and adults, they don't speak for 20 years? It's very simple. In life, you can choose to be happy or choose to be right. Kids choose to be happy. Adults choose to be right. We have a lot to learn from little kids. The person messed you over, they stabbed you in the back, it's terrible what they did. 100%. You're right. Choose to be happy. Choose to be happy. Even if you're right. Go out of your way, forgive them. Right? We're now in the 3 weeks. And we all know the 3 weeks lead up to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Why? Because of Sinat Chinam. The first Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, 70 years. What's the reason the first Beit HaMikdash is destroyed? The rabbis tell us the 3 cardinal sins: Avodah Zarah, Gidurayot, Shechut Tamim. 70 years. Doesn't get worse than those. You have to be willing to give up your life if somebody says, kill, have relations, right? Bow down to the idol. 70 years. It's been almost 2,000 years. How come? Sinat Chinam. Because throughout history we've chosen to be right. And therefore we're not going to forgive this person, or give in, or go. The Gemara discusses, because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. And we all know the story, that the guy sent his servant to invite, he invited the wrong guy, he invited Bar Kamsa instead of Kamsa. And Rabbi Moshe Levy asks a question, he says, I don't understand. The Gemara says, because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. So Bar Kamsa is the guy who went to the party, got upset, went to the Roman government, tried to get the Jews killed. Who's Kamsa? The guy who didn't get invited to the party. What did he do wrong? It says, because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. You want to tell me because of Bar Kamsa? Okay. You want to tell me because of Bar Kamsa and the guy who invited? Okay. Kamsa, what did he do wrong? He did nothing wrong. He's the guy who didn't get invited. Why do we blame him for the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash? Right. He was supposed to be invited. The servant made a mistake. What did he do wrong? Says Rabbi Moshe Levy, and this might not work within the British mentality. I was a couple of years ago at a Kiddush, and there were a bunch of guys there. What's that?
He was or he wasn't supposed to be invited?
He was supposed to be invited and he wasn't. And the Gemara says, because of him, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. What did he do wrong? He was the guy who wasn't invited.
Is he the one who told the government?
No, Bar Kamsa, the guy who went to the party, is the one who got upset and told the government. So what did the guy who didn't get invited do wrong? A few years ago, 2 years ago, I was at a Kiddush, and it was a very nice Kiddush, and then a bunch of guys were there saying, oh, we're going to this guy's house, he's having a surprise 50th birthday party. Are you coming? And I said, yeah, let's go. And there was one guy over there, and I said, are you coming? He goes, oh, I wasn't invited. I'm like, the wife probably didn't have your number. It's a surprise party. you're friends with the guy, come. He goes, but I wasn't invited. I'm like, I'm sure he wants you to be there. He didn't know about it. Just come. He's like, but I wasn't invited. And I said to him, you know what Rabbi Moshe Levy says? What did Kamsa do wrong? He knew that he's friends with the guy. He knew he didn't get an invitation. You know what he should have went over to his friend and said, by the way, I would love to come to your wedding. Of course, you're invited. Are you sure? Because I didn't get an invite. Really? I sent my guy to your house. And then they would have realized. The fact that Kamsa should have went out of his way, says, I'm friends, we're neighbors, we're buddies. And he knew that he probably should have been invited. Instead of saying, how dare he doesn't invite me? I thought we were friends. Chutzpah. Forget about him. I'm not over talking. The fact that he knew there was a wedding. He knew there's a wedding. Everybody else is invited. All his friends are invited. He's one of the boys. He should have went to whoever the host was and says, maybe there was a mix-up. I would love to be mishtatef if it's okay. Right? That's very non-British. You're not going to invite yourself to a party. I get it. Right? That's why I gave you the example of a kiddush. Kiddush, not such a big deal. You're not coming. There's not going to be a place card. All right. Yeah.
I'm not clear. I thought he came even though he wasn't invited, and the host told him to.
That's Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa came. He got the invite. Bar Kamsa got the invite, but it wasn't for him. It was for Kamsa. Kamsa shouldn't have been invited. The servant made a mistake. Invited Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa showed up, and everybody's like, we hate you. What are you doing over here? You're a Rasha. And he goes, dude, don't make a scene. Let me just have my meal. And they said, no, get out. And he said, I'll pay for half the wedding. They said, no, I'll pay for the whole wedding. Dude, we don't want you here. He got so upset, he went to the Roman government, said to the Roman government, the Jews are rebelling against you. The Caesar says, what do you mean? He says, send them a sacrifice, you'll see. And as they send the sacrifice, he puts a little mum, a little scratch in the eye, and they don't bring it as a sacrifice. You see, Kamsa's the guy who didn't get the invite. Says Reb Chaim Shulevitz, if you're, we're saying, says Reb Chaim Shulevitz, you know that your friend's having a party, you know your friend's having a kiddush, and a mistake must have happened. Go over and say, hey, I would love to be part of this. Is there something I did that I'm not invited? No, of course you're invited. And they would have realized the mistake, and that would have saved everything. But because Kamsa said, hey, he doesn't invite me, even though I thought we were good friends. I invited him to all my kids' weddings, and he doesn't invite me to his. Kamsa's to blame to some extent as well. He's not the main guy. The Gemara says because of both of them. But what did Kamsa do wrong? Says Reb Chaim Shulevitz. Not our discussion for now. It's not a chinuch class. Right? What does bar mean? Son. Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Some say because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa is the Rasha, the guy who went and tattled to the government. But you know whose fault it is also? His father's fault. He didn't give good chinuch. But it's another class for another time. Because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. But Bar Kamsa is the son of Kamsa. That's even his name. He's known as the guy. It's his father's fault. But that's another class for another time.
That Kamsa? No, it's a different.
It says because of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. So the simple explanation is
Kamsa was the father of Bar.
that there's one explanation. I think it's the Maharsha says that. Simple explanation is there's a guy called, Kamsa, a guy called Bar Kamsa. Right? A guy called Levi, a guy called Halevi. And they just got confused.
Jacob's and Jacob's son.
Exactly. Jacob's. So the servant made a mistake. But the Maharsha is saying, totally different explanation. Kamsa, Bar Kamsa, Kamsa is the dad. That's not the simple explanation, but according to the Maharsha, that's it's the father's fault that he didn't be mechanach his kid. Another class for another time. Pinchas gets up there and he brings shalom into the world. Why? Because he understands, I got to do what I got to do. I got to do what's going to happen to me. The Gemara discusses how all they didn't want to let him in. The people from Shimon, their guy, their leader, the head of their tribe, how dare you? Pinchas goes, no, I also want to go in. I also want to have a turn. They thought he also wanted to be mizaneh. It's the only way he can get in. But he knew there's a good chance if he kills their leader, what are they going to do to him? Kill him. It's a miracle that he didn't get killed. He didn't get lynched. Again, there's a maghefa, there's a plague. People dying left, right, and center. There was about to be a mega war. The people from Shimon were going to stand up for their leader, and they thought what we're doing is right. They were convinced. Allahu Akbar. Pinchas gets up there, and he creates shalom by standing up for what's right and not saying, what can I do? Right? A lot of people are watching. Only one person stood up and said, and saved the Civil War. Saved hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of lives. The parasha is named after him. He gets Brit Kuhunat Olam. You want to get Kabbalistic, they say Pinchas either ends up coming back as the Gilgul, as Eliyahu Hanavi. He becomes the Kohen Gadol, right? Lives for hundreds of years, till the times of Yiftach and the whole thing, Bat Yiftach. Why does he get all these amazing blessings and accolades? Shalom. Because ultimately, he created Shalom. Shalom means shlemut. It's an element of completeness. And that's something that we don't even realize consistently. We have to do our best to create. Friday night, we sing to the angels. What do we ask them? What's the bracha we ask the angels for? Baruchuni, the shalom. Everything's the shalom. Shalom aleichem. Even Shabbat, shalom. Shalom is one of Hashem's names. Shalom. Shlemut. Having an element of completeness. During the 3 weeks, I remember last year I was going to Israel, and the guy from El Al has like 1 million questions. So who packed your bags? I'm like, is there a service you can pay someone? Because like, of course I pack my bags. Who else is packing my bags? Right? They don't like it when you start like making jokes. Right? They get very upset. And they ask you more questions. Where are you going? To Israel. Why? Like, you need a reason to go to Israel? It's our homeland. Right? And he goes, where are you going? I'm like, Yerushalayim. Why? I'm like, to visit family. Who is your family? Dod Yehuda and Dod Shlomo. Right? And the guy's like, what is your occupation? I'm like, I'm a rabbi. He goes, really? Right? Because usually rabbis got beards. I'm like, that's it. Now I'm giving you a Dvar Torah. I said, you don't believe me? I'll tell you what I spoke about this morning. I was in a shul that morning. I did nits so I could get to the flight in time. And they said to me, share a few words. And it was during the 3 weeks. And I said to them, the name Yerushalayim. Where does the name Yerushalayim come from? Shalem. And Yeru. Avraham Avinu is at the Akedah, the holiest place in the world, where we now have the Kotel, the Bet HaMikdash, and he brings Yitzchak as a sacrifice, and he names the place. What does it say? Vayikra Hashem HaMakom Ha'u, Hashem Yireh. He names it Yireh. Right? The parasha before that, he's greeted by Malki Tzedek, Melech Shalem. Right? Shem, the son of Noach, says Rashi, is Malki Tzedek. Kohen Elyon, he's a Kohen, just like Pinchas Kohen. And what is he? He's the king of Shalem. What's Shalem? It's where? It means completeness. It's where we have Yerushalayim. So we take the Yireh of Avraham Avinu, you take the Shalem of the son of Noach, and you put it together, Yireh Shalem. We make it plural, Yerushalayim, because there's a Yerushalayim in heaven, a Yerushalayim down here. You're getting into all Kabbalistic stuff, but it becomes plural, Yerushalayim. Right? We're supposed to see completeness. You come to the Bet HaMikdash, and you're complete. The ultimate completeness. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shalem. Right? Shalom is Shalem. It's coming together. That's what we need to do during these 3 weeks. So we always read Parashat Pinchas, pretty much always, unless there's a leap year, right? You have Pinchas, Matot Maseh, and Devarim. Pinchas is always either right before or usually during the 3 weeks, because we need to stop and ask ourselves, are we doing our best to get the bracha of Niten Lo Beriti Shalom, of creating Shalom, of being at peace? Right? We said in Birkat Kohanim, Shalom. Right? V'yitem lecha. Right? We have Shalom. We want peace. That's the last bracha na'amidah. Is Sim Shalom. Why is that the last bracha na'amidah? It's the kli machzik bracha. It's the vessel that holds everything. Because you can have brains, tachonen amdad, you could have rifa'enu, you could have barachenu, and parnasa, you could have everything. But if you don't have Shalom, if you come home and in the house, all you're doing is fighting and balagan and screaming, what's the point of having all the wisdom and all the money and all the health if you don't want to be at home? And if all you're getting is anxiety. And all you have to be at peace, and you have to do your best to create peace. Nitzanot b'riti shalom. Pinchas stood up for what was right. Hashem says, I give you the bracha. You're created shalom. Sometimes it's rodef. Right? Very rarely. You need to speak to a friend, to somebody outside, because we're nogea b'davar. Shimon and Levi might have done the right thing in theory, but they did it for the wrong, because it was our sister. How dare that she does that to me? Right? Kamsa, I didn't get invited. You're best friends. You know that there must have been a mix-up. The post somehow didn't come in the post. Right? Nowadays you just get the paper list. They don't. You get the email. They don't usually do invitations anymore since COVID, pretty much, in the post. But it used to be an invitation got lost in the post. I one time got an invitation like 3 months after the wedding. It happens. Right? The person messaged me, are you coming or not? We need the RSVP. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't get the invite. Okay, great. So, shalom. Do your best to create shalom. We don't know how, what, where. Send a message. I remember a woman got very upset at me during COVID. She says, my mother passed away and my father passed away. You didn't even say anything. You didn't message me. You didn't call. I'm like, I honestly had no idea. People assume the rabbis know, right? Even if it's months later and you find out, call. Say, I'm really sorry. Send a message. So happy. Do your best to create shalom. But they didn't tell me. They didn't invite me. I didn't get. Okay. You're right. Be happy. Do your best to create shalom. No one's going to be upset if they get a message, mazel tov. Or if they get a message, whatever it might be, we're thinking of you. Let me know when you're available. Let's grab a coffee. It can only help. It can only create shalom. But they didn't. When we were doing a campaign for the Bet Midrash, BBM, to raise money, and I said to people, you have to reach out to all your friends, and they're like, some of these people we haven't spoken to in like 2 or 3 years. I'm like, it's okay. They haven't spoken to you in 2 or 3 years too. So just call them up. Be like, dude, how come you haven't called me in 3 years? Yeah, I'm busy. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll let you make it up. You can give a donation on my page, right? It works both ways. You're right. You haven't spoken to them. They haven't spoken to you. So what? Send a message. It's been forever thinking about you. Hope all is well. Let me know when you're... Create shalom. That's what Hashem during these weeks. If the Beit Midrash was destroyed because of Sinat Chinam, we need to do our best to create Ahavat Chinam. If we do that, then Be'ezat Hashem, we'll get like Pinechas, Brit Kehunat Olam, this everlasting inner peace, health, living long. And Eliyahu Navi, it's not a coincidence. Eliyahu is the one that Mivaseh the Ugula. It ties back to Pinechas because Shalom, he stood up for what was right. Stand up for what's right. Be the bigger person. Even if you're right, be happy. And if we do that, then Be'ezat Hashem, we'll have a true Shalom in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim, after the Shalem, completeness. Amen.